language. Language is like oxygen. We don't think about having to breathe it, right? It's like light. We don't think about having to walk outside and focus it on. We just see and we just hear. We're fine. We just breathe. But with language, I've always had an interest in language because I think it goes deeper than that. Like I was struck at a very early age. There was a prayer in the church I went to, and it was something about, in the beginning was the Word. Well, I misinterpreted that, and I thought it was words. Okay, in the beginning was words, so I thought, well, language was really important. Then as I got older, and I began to broaden my sphere into other religions and my studies, I heard another disciple say something to the effect that all spiritual work begins in sensation. All spiritual work begins in sensation. Now I was wondering, well, why? When I was involved with thinking about things, spiritual things or philosophical things, it was thought, it was reading, it was writing, maybe a prayer occasionally. There wasn't much that had to do with sensation. And so I want to do a little object lesson before I get into the crux of my speech, just to kind of ground us in our bodies for that period of time. So if you'd pass that out, begin to pass out some of the things that I brought. Now, when all religions have prayer beads, Catholics, I grew up with rosary. When I was in Eastern Orthodox, we had actual woven prayer beads. The Hindus, these are Hindu prayer beads. The Muslims also had prayer beads. And when they go through their daily life, you would see a devout person fingering his beads, perhaps even saying a prayer as he was doing business or talking to somebody. So get a feel of all of these. Feel them before you pass them on. It's kind of interesting what's taking place when you're doing that. Your hand and fingers have receptors on them. They're nerves. And if you press something against your hand, what happens is a synapse takes place. Okay? The nerve sends some kind of a fluid out of its dendrite, and a little spark goes across it, and it goes from the finger all the way up to your brain. And the estimate is there are 10,000 synapses that take place, 10,000 neural transmissions that have to happen so that what I'm holding in my hand actually begins to register as a word. And probably each of you, when you see these things, know what the word is that's associated with that. Also, it's interesting that you have the discrimination and ability to hold them and pass them on, and to not break them, not drop them, but actually handle them without thinking about it. Now, to me, that's the thing, without thinking about any of this stuff. Now, the other thing, of course, is that you're looking at these things at the same time. Okay? And I mean, that's a puzzlement to me. I wouldn't think about it too long. I started thinking about this, and I really had to stop. Because everything that you're looking at, photons, which they're subatomic particles, we don't even know what they're made of. They bounce off the objects, they fly across space, and they hit us in their eyes. They hit something called an opsine. Yeah, the opsine changes shape and creates a nerve cascade that goes to our brain and causes us to see shape and color. Okay, I just find stuff like that amazing. The other thing, though, I find amazing is, and I'll pass it this way, is words. Our words. And so when I was with some friends and we were drinking wine, I said, well, let's come up with all the words that we can think of that our hands can discriminate, tell us about. Okay? We didn't do aromas, we didn't do tastes. We decided, okay, let's get some feelings. So pretty soon, people were getting up and walking all around the house and, feeling the drapery and the carpets and things like that to see if they could come up with different things. So in a period of about an hour, we came up with 73 adjectives to describe all these different sensations that you get when you hold things in your hand. Everything from, heat to cold, from soft to warm, and you can see all the rest of the things that are in here as well. Now, there seem to be a lot of S words and F words. I don't know what that's about. But that's okay. I just wanted you to see that they say that we lose a lot of words as we get older. We stop being fine and precise about the words that we have. So I just wanted you to see that if you take a little time, you can, especially if you have a consortium of friends around you, you can really begin to build up some of that sense of discernment that you've lost before. Okay. Now, what's taking place now is also fairly amazing. A friend of mine said that without continual neural transmission, without being driven by hormones, and without conforming to the DNA that's within us, that actually gathers information and translates that information into the protein, which is our bodies, nothing takes place. Okay? In other words, he's saying that we're organisms that are bathed in these ions that go from one nerve transmission to another, that's bathed in hormones, that's bathed in the blood that are right next to every nerve and muscle that we have. Okay? That gives us the nutrients and oxygen so that our cells and the various tissues can survive. Now, we don't have to think about this. It's a given. Hallelujah. I mean, think of all the complex things we do each day. Like right now, what I'm doing is I'm blowing out air. I'm creating pressure against the molecules in the air, and somehow you're taking those vibrations and you're translating them into some sort of meaningful structures of sentences. I thought I was doing that actually, but when you read it in the book, you're doing that. I'm not sure what I'm here for. Now, the other thing that's interesting is, okay, so the hypothalamus, which is responsible for being awake. If we didn't have one, we wouldn't be awake right now. That's right about here in our brain, okay? Yours is generating hormones so that you stay awake. Mine's probably generating a few more hormones right now because I might be expending a little more energy than you are at this time, okay? Right next to it and larger than it is Broca's area, B-R-O-C-A, area. It kind of reminds me of demilitarized zone or something like that. That's what they call it. And that's where our language facilities are stored. Not just the ability to produce language, but also the ability to comprehend language. And what else? Gestures. Even gestures are in that one particular place. And so all this stuff is involuntary. I haven't had to think about any of it, nor have you, at least since we started the meeting. I don't know what takes place beforehand, but I'm observing you very closely. And I can see that none of you had to stop to really pay attention, to listen, or to move things around, or even to speak so far. You haven't had to think about it once. I find that really interesting. Okay, now think back. Do you remember when you learned how to ride a bicycle? Can you? Where was it? Do you remember where it was? And who taught you? Tell me, who taught you?
California, my dad.
Your dad, okay. Who taught you? Anybody?
My sister.
Sister? Okay, my best friend taught me how to ride the bicycle. Okay, we remember that. And maybe you can even remember the bicycle and what was taking place. You had a sensation of yourself while this was all happening. Do you remember when you first learned to read and write? For me, it was in first grade. What was it for you guys? Was it first grade? What was it like in California? Was it second grade for you guys? Were you guys later than the East Coast kids? We're ahead of you? And I can even remember the teacher having like a blackboard that had lines on it, and she would write the letters in between the lines, okay? That was my first experience in having to write between the lines and read between the lines. Before that, I was all over the map. Okay. But you remember that, right? You remember that? Okay. Remember being taught to read and write? Not only just to read, but to follow directions. Okay. I started learning how to read and write in first grade, but I didn't catch on to directions till third grade. I had a problem with that. Okay, now what about learning to speak? Do you remember when you learned to speak? I don't. Who does? Anybody here? You do. Oh, tell us.
I was 3 years old and I had not said a word.
Wow.
My
Okay.
mother told me this. So I think I remember it, but,
Wow.
and she gave everybody, all my older brother and older sister got a hot dog in a bun, and I only got the bun. And I went up and I said, held out the bun, and I said, I want a log too.
You had real motivation to say something, huh? Wow. And so that was your first spoken word, but you were comprehending language before that, and you were probably thinking words to yourself, yes?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, because I have no recollection of when I was learning to speak and understand what other people are saying. Most people don't have that experience. And I think it's because so much is going on with all these neural transmissions in the different parts of the brain. It would be overwhelming for us to be able to consciously do it like we can consciously learn how to ride a bicycle. Okay. You know, I'm fond of collecting. And one of the things that I like to collect are phrases. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to keep with the theme of sensation and words, okay? And so I came up with expressions that are called idioms. Okay, idiom is from the Greek, and it comes from the word that means person or people, okay? And so it's come down to our language as expressions that have become common to our language. Now, all of these are expressions that I heard people say or I thought of, and it could have been listening to the news or listening to a friend. I do carry a little notebook with me, and when I recognize something that I recognize it's unfamiliar, I write it down, okay? Now, these words the derivation of these words go back quite a long time, okay? Most of these words are not contemporary. So these were done before the internet. But there was some kind of linguistic network that was taking place. At some point, somebody thought of the expression to hang on every word. Can you picture that? Can you picture a word up here and somebody hanging on it? I mean, what a great figurative expression it is. Somebody must have liked that and passed it on to somebody else. And God knows how many decades or century it took until it's now part of our language. And it's so much a part of our language that we say it oftentimes and don't even summon it up like spinning through an archive to summon it up. It just comes flying out of our mouth. What about, well, I'm just beginning to catch on? I really like that idea. It's either like a baseball, it's just about by me and I go like this and catch it, or a train is coming by and I jump on it and catch on the caboose right as it's leaving the station. To carry on a conversation, you know, you have to carry it. It's really a heavy conversation. Or to drop a hint. So these are all expressions that have to do with a meaningful statement, words, but they also convey a picture of somebody doing something, often with hands. And so I found it, well, gee, it's kind of what I'm talking about, hands and, words and sensation, okay? So all of these are somewhat related to that. You picked up on that fast. Okay, you have to pick it up, and I did that fast. I really caught on. My favorite one are the last two. I can't shake that feeling. I like that one. It's like somebody, it's like glue or molasses. Somebody put the feeling on me, and the only way I can get rid of it is to shake it off. Isn't there a song about that? Taylor Swift does it? Okay. Set your mind at rest. Now that's a good one. I would love to do that right now. Just set it to rest. So these are very interesting expressions, and I do this because I'm so excited about this. I know I don't convey the excitement physically. I've never been a really demonstrative person. But I thought, well, maybe if I collect these things in a list, you'll say, wow, look at that. Well, there are a lot of interesting things here, and they're part of my language. My language is really colorful, and there's a lot to it. Now, there's another list that I have, and this is a little more conceptual, and it might take longer to go through, so I'm just going to do maybe one. And it's all about the things that we do linguistically that we don't think about doing. They're really complicated things. Like we know how to use language to get closer to someone or to distance ourselves from someone. You do that, don't you? Somebody comes into your space, starts to maybe be a little bit of a bully, and you know how to say, oh, I'm right in the middle of something. I know that's important. I'll call you as soon as I'm done here. Or, no thank you. Yes, you are quite attractive and charming, but I'm married, or whatever. We all know how to distance ourselves from somebody, and we also know how to talk nice to people, okay? And I was a salesperson, and so I knew many people who were good at chapter and versing unnecessary details to hypnotize people. And do you know people like that? They just keep talking and talking. Not like me, of course, because I'm doing that. I'm chapter and versing you, but trying to wake you up. Think of me as an alarm clock, okay? Not as a hypnotist. But people can do that. What I want to do is to give a specific example. Just recently, a good friend of ours went through a divorce. She had married a man who was younger than her, which I understand is okay because of the development of men and women and stuff and all of that. And it was working. It seemed to work for 15 or 17 years. And then one night, they got into a battle royal about something that remains undiscovered. And he referred to her as an old bag, or an old hag, or an old nag. I can't remember which word it was, but one of those words. And he can't come back from that. The woman cannot forgive him. Okay? And so I was wondering, like if it happened to you and me, I said something to you, and I hurt you to the quick, right to the core. A slow knife. And you say, that's it. I'm part Italian. You should have never done that to me, Vince. And so then I came back because I realized, my God, I said something I shouldn't have said, and this guy's not only useful to me, he helps me pass out things, and we do winery things together, and all of that. And so how would I approach him, okay? Can we pretend that never happened, Bill? Can we pretend that never happened? Can we start all over again? How could we start all over again? Does that help if I make it a question? How could we start all over again, Bill?
Good question.
Why can't we start over again? Why can't we?
Why not?
Yeah. How can I ever make it up to you? Oh, you're thinking of it. Stop. I never meant it like that. After all this time, you can't really believe I meant it the way it came out. Could you? The way it came out? I'd like to try for something better with you. Would you give me that chance? That's from a Warfarin ad. They say, going for something better. No, it's Eloquist.
Of course.
But of course. I beg you, I assure you, that will never happen again. Can't we go on from this?
Now you're talking.
All right. So, all the different ways by asking a question, by demonstrating something, and you just come up with stuff like this. If I had asked you to come up with 6 apologies or 8 apologies for something, you would have been able to come up with that. It's inside you. You have a grammar that's been put inside you that you can transform into language like this that you do all the time. Okay. Last part of my speech here. I was interested in the movies that they have that have androids in them. And because the more I began to look at all these things that I don't do, I'm not sure who does them. See, speak, hear, okay? Consider things. But the blood is pumping through my body, my brain is working. I don't tell them to do it. They just pump away, I was thinking, I'm kind of like an android myself. So if you've seen movies like Ex Machina or Blade Runner or Her, where there's an application, a systems app, any kind of artificial intelligence, I'm beginning to wonder, what do I peel off that is originally my own, okay? And I came up with a number of different things. One is, I'm able to recognize the needs other people have. And if they're in distress, maybe make an effort to heal them. Can a machine do that? I guess maybe you could make one, but I see this as a symptom of being human. Okay, I like to say a symptom of being human because I think we're all disease. Okay? And so I really shouldn't call them that. I should call them the virtues of being a human. The other is to be able to give up or forgo something that's personal to you for someone else or someone higher or something higher, a higher cause. And that would be a sacrifice. The other thing is to be vulnerable. Can a machine be vulnerable? Can I take the risk of opening up myself to share with you or to create the possibility of relationship? Do machines do that? Somebody thinks they can program them to be vulnerable in the future. Then, of course, there's acts of sympathy and acts of empathy, where you take pleasure in seeing someone else succeed. We do that, right? You do that at FTB all the time. And also the pleasure of companionship. I don't know if artificial intelligences can get pleasure out of companionship. Okay? To weigh and consider things. I thought a machine could do that, but one of my doctor friends insists that only human beings can weigh and consider acts, options, and the consequences of their acts or options. We discussed that further, and he said, well, but if you take into consideration your experience and reflect on your experience, okay, that seems to me very human. I don't know if a machine can do that or not. Strive for originality and meaning. In other words, to think out of the box, to jump up on the table like that. I don't know if that'll be successful or not, but that was certainly striving, I think, to be original. It's probably never been done before. That's what the definition of original is, I think. Okay? To break the programming and to sense an identity. I know you must have sensed who you were when you were standing up on that table, reaching down and shaking the hands of those management people. There's no way you could have avoided having a sensation of yourself at that time. And last of all, and these were all calls to actions, maybe you missed that. Gratitude. All this has been given us. All this nervous system activity we have, our brain, our blood system, the way we think, the way we read, the way we write, the associates we have, the opportunities we have, these moments of awareness and companionship that we have, they're all given. And what do you do when something is given to you? You say, thank you, Toastmasters. Thank you.